officially start us and then we'll do introductions. All right. Welcome to the February 7th meeting of the Westborough Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Westborough Diversity and Inclusion Committee will be conducted on Thursday, February 17th, 2022, via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting may do so by following the Zoom link that was on the agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so for reasons of economic hardship and despite best efforts, we will post on Westborough TV website or audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment may do so by remote access as noted above and as instructed below. The meeting will also be broadcast live in real time via Westborough TV on local cable, Verizon Channel 28 and Charter 192, and online at westboroughtv.org and on their YouTube channel. Members of the public may speak at this meeting during our open forum segment on the agenda. As noted in the guidelines that were attached to the agenda, it is preferred but not required that members of the public inform me, the chairperson, prior to the meeting of their intent to speak at open forum. Members of the public who wish to speak at the meeting outside of the open forum are required to contact the chairperson in advance of the meeting to make such arrangements. To otherwise contribute to the discussion on agenda items or to suggest topics for future agenda items, members of the public may send email to our email address at diversity@town.westborough.ma.us or call me, the chairperson, at 508-366-3090. All right, it's lovely to see all of you. We will start with introductions since we have a new member. It's always helpful. Please, if you don't mind, share your name, who you represent, if you represent any department or particular entity, and anything else you wish to share. And then I'll ask Ian to share a little bit more in addition to that. So I will start and call on each of you. I'm Kara Presley. I use the pronouns she, her, hers. I am the chairperson of this committee. My full-time job is as director of Westborough Youth and Family Services. I am a social worker in that role as well. And next we'll go to Shazia.
Hi, my name is Shazia Tariq, and I'm almost 2-decade resident of Westborough. I have 4 kids, and I represent everybody.
Thank you. Shelby?
Oh, I like that. I represent everybody. Very nice, Shelby. All right. So my name is Shelby Marshall. I am a member of the select board. So I'm the appointed member from that board. And that's all I have.
There you go. Mike.
My name is Mike Daniels. I'm a lieutenant with the Westborough Police Department, and I've been with the D&I committee since we started. So,
thanks. Donna.
Hi, my name is Donna Lang. I use the pronouns she, her. I'm a resident in Westborough. I have a child in the public schools, and I'm here representing, I like what you said. I'm here representing everyone, I hope. Welcome.
Thanks. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Willoughby. I am using the pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm here representing the Westborough Public Schools. I teach English as a second language at the Hastings Elementary School.
And Ian, welcome. Please share anything you'd like to about what brings you to us as a new member today.
So hi, Kara. Hello, everybody. I'm Ian Lyons. I've been living in Westborough for 2.5 years. I've really enjoyed it. This is my new home. And after 2 years of essentially being pandemicked out of any reasonable style of existence, I've been looking for ways that I can contribute back to the community. And I had a look at the list of openings for different boards and committees, and this is one that I had some sense of affiliation with. I've been involved fairly informally with various activities that represent inclusion, and that ranges from being an active employer of minority tradespeople when I was a landlord in St. Louis. I've actively employed people casually who I thought needed a bit of a hand up. And most recently, just before I left St. Louis, I was involved with the Ethical Society, a humanist congregation. I was involved with their Stop Racist committee. The idea there was that we would project into that organisation information and introductions to people that were active in the community. Interestingly, St. Louis has the largest humanist society of any in the United States, and by one measure, they represent nearly half of all humanist society members in this country. So it's quite an exceptional organisation. It's basically church for the irreligious, I guess. But thank you. I'm looking forward to contributing ways that I might contribute to this group, both for things that are ongoing, and I think Shelby knows that I've got some fairly wild and wacky out there ideas that I might be able to project in. But thank you for welcoming me.
Thank you very much. It's so nice to have you. Alma, who has also been around since the beginning and who is also our director of our senior center, will be joining us hopefully, but late. And I thought that Kim Foster would be here, but maybe not. We'll see. And as I mentioned before, Cola and Sarah cannot be here today. All right, so today we have a pretty simple agenda. It doesn't appear that we have anyone here for open forum today. We are not going to approve January minutes because they are not ready to be approved. So we'll defer that until next month. We'll do any community issues and announcements, and then we're going to spend the majority of our time today talking about the community survey proposal and preparing to create a presentation for the select board for that. I do, just in case there are any members of the public watching today, I want to invite and encourage members of the public to come to our open forum, and also to contribute to our agenda in other ways by contacting us and letting us know what is happening. And then, as most of you know, I also try to keep on the agenda a segment for announcements and issues so that just we as members can bring up anything that has come up in our own sectors that we can share that is relevant to the work of the committee and to the community who watches these meetings. Hi, Kim, welcome. Would you like—
My apologies for being late.
That's all right. Would you be willing to introduce yourself just so Ian, our newest member, can know who you are?
Sure. Hi, Ian. I'm Kim Foster. I'm the assistant town manager, and I have been involved with the committee for just over 2 years now. So welcome. Thank you for your stepping up and volunteering to serve.
Well, I'll try and keep the veneer of usefulness and niceness going, Kim. I can't promise anything.
We tend to be a wild, nice group. We also tend to have candid conversation, which is something I really appreciate about this particular meeting. So I hope that will continue with our new member as well. Who has announcements or community issues that you would like to bring to our attention? Shelby, go ahead.
Sure, thanks, Carol. So a couple of items. So one near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure all of you and our viewers, is the upcoming town meeting. So that will take place on Saturday, March 19th. It's better than any TV show or Super Bowl or anything you can watch or attend. And it's free. It's actually free. So you can come, you can stay all day. It can be entertaining. It can be interesting. But in all seriousness, we've got a packed warrant, which for those that aren't familiar with that is basically sort of, think of it like the agenda for the meeting. That warrant is available to be viewed. I think we're on version 8 now, as it goes through its various iterations through different boards, committees, and the town departments. That is available on the town's website for anyone to look at and peruse. The meeting, help me out, Kim, starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, I believe, on Saturday. I think that's right. She's going to check. There's something for everyone. There will be articles about the schools and school buildings. There will be articles about the police department and vehicles and staffing. And there's certainly an article that sets our tax rate ultimately, because it defines how much money we're going to spend as a town. Really important to this committee is that there is a citizens petition currently. It's the last article where all citizens petitions are placed on historically on our warrants. And that petition is on a topic we have talked about as a committee, and that is to for Westborough to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day as the second Monday in October. So again, if you go to the warrant, you can look at all the articles, you can read the language of that article, and certainly if you have any questions or anyone in the community has any questions, I'm happy to be a resource. Our town manager and assistant town manager resources and all those departments that are represented in the warrant. I know we're happy to answer questions for those that don't immerse themselves in town government on a weekly basis, but now want to have questions. So it's never too late to ask them, and attending is really important because it is the purest form of democracy. It is the way for you to cast your vote one by one on matters that matter to you, and that that you have a stake in, whether that's the schools or the roads or whatever. So anyway, hopefully I did a great sales pitch for that. The other item, and Carrie, are you going to cover the Westborough Connects Youth and Mental? No,
Go ahead.
Okay, so Westborough Connects is hosting a youth, let's talk about it, youth mental health. They're offering 2 sessions, one virtual, one in person. You can find out more information on westboroughconnects.org. Those events will be held March 3rd from 7 to 8 p.m. That's the virtual event, and March 10th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Registration is free. You just have to go on and let them know, and it's really an opportunity for adults to get together to talk about a topic that we know is, in some ways it's in crisis level for many families and for youth, and a great educational opportunity for everyone. So thanks.
I will, before I call on you, Tim, I'll expand upon that just to say, for what it's worth, I'll be facilitating those community conversations on the 3rd and the 10th. And if you are a person who either parents adolescents or cares about adolescents in your life, I really strongly encourage you to come and help us talk about youth mental health. Kim.
Town meeting starts at 9 a.m. on Saturday, March 19th, and that is at the high school.
I guess I would have been late. Thank you, Kim.
Mike, did you?
I'm sorry,
go ahead,
Kara,
Ian.
I wonder, Shelby, could you put links to those websites or those web pages in the chat so that we can capture those more easily?
I will, and yes, thank you. Great suggestion.
Thank you.
To register for those who are watching this publicly and can't see the chat, to register for the Let's Talk About It event through Westborough Connects and Youth and Family Services and others. You go to westboroughconnects.org to their programs, and you can sign up for that way. All right. I have, Mike, go ahead.
Just real quick. I'm taking minutes. I don't know if we discussed who's speaking. I'm usually Alma.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Actually, Alma has stepped down in her role as secretary, and Sarah Willoughby and Kim Foster have stepped up. So Sarah is taking minutes today. But thank you.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, no
You're
problem.
always generous in your willingness to do that.
Thank you.
Did you have something else, Shelby?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I totally forgot.
Okay.
Town elections are March 8th. And again, I'll put a link on to Ian's suggestion. It's a great one. So they're on March 8th. There are several, this is not like a big election in terms of state representatives and president and all that. These are local elections. But again, when we think about the things that influence us every day and the services we receive, you are casting a vote for those people that represent you, on the select board or the planning board or what have you. So School committee, planning board, and select board are all seats that are being elected, as well as the trustees of Soldiers Memorial. So again, more information on the town's website. So ask people to come out and vote. Be great. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Excuse me, I have an announcement. My announcement is more individual in nature, in that I want you all to know that I am going to officially step down from this position as chairperson on this committee. I'm not going to do it today immediately, because I recognize that this has been a really full committee, and the role of chairperson has entailed a lot, and the person who steps up to this role next may need some time to consider if they want to do that, and what that might look like. I will offer to sort of do some hand holding of the person who comes after me. So please know that you won't be totally on your own. And Kim Foster has also offered to support the next chairperson in all of the ways that Kim constantly supports me and this meeting, by sort of helping us with the logistics and all of the formalities of things. So please know that if you would consider that, you will not be thrown in the deep end on your own. I don't have a specific date in mind, although my intention is to step down after we present our upcoming proposal to the select board. My intention at this point is to stay as a voting member on the committee, at least for the time being. I value the work that this committee does. And I feel like after over two and a half years, I think, in my tenure as chairperson, not only am I following the handbook by stepping aside, but I think that I just feel like my time in this role has come to an end. I will share more next month about my thoughts about sort of my parting insights into the role and into the committee. I want to organize those a bit more before I share any now. But one thing that I have been considering quite a lot is that I think that this role would be best held by a community representative who is not a town employee or elected official. I think to best represent the needs of the broader community without any risk of, or with much less risk of, potential conflict of interest, it would be beneficial to have a volunteer community member in that role. It's not required. There's nothing in the charter that says it needs to be that way or another, but that is my 2 cents. So I just want to encourage those of you who are not employees or elected officials to think about whether or not this role might be a good fit for you. And I am more than happy to have as extensive as you wish conversations offline about what the role entails and what that might look like. All right.
I feel like this is a mic drop moment.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll hold comments and thank yous until your kind of final parting message. But to say I'm sorry to hear that is, kind of an understatement, but because you've been a great leader of this group through some, it's new formative times. And I know I certainly have appreciated that. So
thank you, Shelby.
Big shoes to fill.
Well, I also want to say that you will not be expected to fill my shoes because I think that the last 2 years have been really unique in establishing this committee in a new way, and that we've had very unique issues on the table. And not to say that we won't continue to, but part of what I'll talk about as I get my thoughts together more is that, maybe the person in the chairperson role doesn't need to take on as much as I did, as I have, as far as if you're worried about like sort of the time commitment, thinking about how to spread the work of the committee, more specifically define the work of this committee so that the responsibility is not held in an imbalanced way by any one or two or three people on the committee. So just please think about that. I invite you all to share your thoughts in what that might look like. It's not up to us to change the structure of this committee. This is a conversation that I'll have with Christy Williams as well. And it might just be a work in progress. But I think it's appropriate, in my opinion, to have that conversation start with this group, since we are the ones who know the work of this committee better than anyone else.
I'd like to say something since Shelby did. And I think, obviously, since I've been, part of this committee since we established it, I would say, Kara, thank you so much for all the work that you've done. And I know nothing's finalized, but I remember there was a time where we were just trying to figure out what our identity was as a committee. And you came along at an awesome time for us because you gave us that focus, and almost like a task list, which I'm good at following tasks. Most of the people, I know Kim's a task person, but you basically outlined, and targeted certain things that we should be focused on as a group, as a unit. And, I still enjoy having you chair this. You're a fantastic leader, and I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike.
You're welcome.
Well, yes, let's no, I'm not going anywhere permanent, and I'll be here next month. So, we can chat more about it as we go. Any other comments or other additional issues or announcements before?
Yeah. So Kara,
Yes,
I'm looking at 8 members of the committee. Are there any absent?
Yes,
From this meeting?
We have 3 people absent today. One is Alma Demanch, and she's a town employee. She's the director of the senior center. And then we have 2 other community members who, similar to you, have volunteered as community members, and that is Sarah Shamsadan and Kola Rashid.
Okay. The reason I ask, of course, is that if I subtract town employees and elected officials from the 8 people that are here and one person that's only been involved for 10 minutes, I don't end up with a very big number.
There are 4 of you. So it's Donna, you, Kola. Oh, no, not Kola. She's a town employee. It's Donna, you, Shazia, and Sarah. And Shazia has been with us for 2 years, almost, not quite, in a formal way, but Shazia used to attend these meetings regularly, even before she became a voting member. But otherwise, you and Donna and Sarah are all relatively new. Which is why I recognize for any of you, there would need to be some kind of, transitional support. Shelby?
I think your recommendation suggestion that it be one of the resident members to chair the committee, I think is a great one. I also would, while that seems daunting for those people that are like, oh my God, what have I been roped into here? Committees can be co-chaired. It requires a different level of coordination between the co-chairs, but it's certainly, they have each other to lean on. And that is certainly something that can be done. And I think that what you'd find is from certainly the town departments, certainly to the town manager's office in particular, that you'd have support in terms of like, well, what do I need to do to run the meeting? Because I've never been a chair. We now have a committee handbook that, while a little bit dry to read, is very helpful and informative. So there are some tools there, and it's I think the group is been very helpful in supporting the chair. I don't think it's kind of an adversarial group, or I think it's so I think if anyone is interested, I would encourage you to have a conversation with Kara or Kim and, you know, see where that can go.
All right. Well, thank you for being supportive always. I do appreciate you. Okay, so here we are to the community survey proposal. We've had many months in the works to get to the point that we are, and we're pretty darn close to getting this project wrapped up, at least at this stage. I sent to you version 4 of the written proposal. There was a version 3, which I'll make available to you and I can put on the website. I realized I forgot to share that. It just had some, like, there was just 2 revisions between the time we met and now, and there was nothing dramatic included or taken out, just some subtle changes here and there. But I'm hoping that I incorporated into, 1 minute, Ian, just a second. I'm hoping that I incorporated into what you have in front of you all of the things that we discussed and perhaps more that I considered after we had that discussion. And I will give the one update since I sent this to you, which is that the school superintendent, Amber Bach, has reviewed this proposal and is in full support of it and is totally comfortable with us saying so in this write-up. So I will edit that line to indicate that. So at this point, what I would like to do is I'll take Ian's comment or question in just a second, but then after that, just your general comments and questions about the write-up that I've sent to you. And then once we kind of feel comfortable with that, we'll move on to talking about the presentation and the details of that. What did you want to say, Ian?
Yeah, so I know it would be very useful for me, but perhaps for other people, if we could restate at a high level what the objective of this survey is and what the precipitating event or question was.
Thank you. I appreciate having you as a newcomer to remind us that not everybody is as up to speed as we are on this whole process. So I think it is we have plenty of time today to give a little recap before we dive into the details. So 2 years ago, just under 2 years ago, about 1.5 years ago or so, we got a whole bunch of new members on this committee, and we started addressing several sort of high priority issues that kept arising. So in our conversations and in the topics that community members would bring to the table, there were several kind of themes that continued to arise over the course of time. And those included a recommendation to adopt Indigenous Peoples Day, which we addressed as its own proposal and did so a few months ago. And also looking at improving language access in town services and government across the board. And we have kind of thrown around lots of different ideas about how to do that over the course of the last 1.5 years. Also included in that was talk about how to provide training to town employees, committee members, elected officials related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and for the purpose of improving those things in town services and government. But we kind of kept getting stuck on all of these issues, recognizing that we, while passionate about this, are not experts in these areas. And so we were having a hard time refining what our priorities were going to be, picking topics and figuring out what to do with them. And at one point we were talking about, like, do we hire someone to do just a broad scale organizational assessment, sort of an audit, so to speak, of our policies and procedures? But that sounded really big and daunting, and we still weren't sure what exactly we were looking to get out of it. And then eventually I also sat down and had a conversation with town manager Christy Williams, and kind of looking for Christy as the appointing person for this committee as to what are her priorities as the town manager and how she sees the priorities of the departments and the town leadership. And she used to be on this committee in addition to before she was the town manager. When she was assistant town manager, she sat as a voting member on this committee. And she said, you know, we learned a lot at the beginning of this committee's formation from department heads about how department heads saw diversity, equity, and inclusion needs within their own departments, but we never really got to hear in any kind of formal way from the public. And it was Christy who sort of helped refine the suggestion that maybe we should look at doing a community survey to start with the community members at large, to hear about how they see the needs and the strengths of Westborough as far as diversity and inclusion in town services and government. So that's the conversation we brought to the committee. That was probably 6 months ago. I'm approximating, I'm not sure exactly. And then we formed a little subcommittee and kind of through continued conversations decided that we would put together a proposal for recommending that the town hire consultants who are experts in issues of diversity, equity, inclusion with institutions such as town government to help us ask community members, what are the needs? What are we doing well and that we can build on and strengthen? And where are the needs where we really do need improvement or changes? And so, as noted in the proposal that you've seen, we want to include in that community survey, looking at community members as not only residents, but town employees and elected officials and committee members and even business owners. So that is where that came from. Is that the level of background you were looking for?
Yep,
Okay.
that's perfect. Yeah.
Sure. Any other questions related to that before we dive into details?
Well, to what proportion of this survey is directed towards the town employees and the town's business versus the proportion that's devoted towards the needs of the various diverse subsets of the community?
That is not a distinction we've made at this point as to if there would be a proportion. I think that part of what we'll look to consultants to help us figure out, we'll look to consultants to help us figure that out. But backing up even further, part of what we have talked about all along is this sort of experience of recognizing how diverse Westborough has become, and diverse across the board, right? Diverse in race, diverse in immigration status, diverse in language, et cetera, religion, and how dramatically the town has changed over the last couple of decades, and recognizing that we have a sense, but it's a sense that not all of those community members that have become part of Westborough in the last couple of decades are engaged in town services and government, either maybe to the extent they would want to be, or that they even know about it. Like, we just don't know, but we know that the town has grown and changed and evolved. And we really want to ensure that everyone who is part of the community has access to services and government. To the greatest extent that people want to be involved and could be involved. And to determine that, we just need to ask a whole lot of questions because we really just don't know.
It won't surprise you to hear that I've just told two of my neighbours, one from Peru and one from Colombia, that we in fact have a library, and that the library has lots of Spanish material and material for people learning to speak English. So, and they actually didn't know where the library physically sat. So,
yeah. Isn't that remarkable? And just anecdotally, one thing we talk about a lot here is that our library is one of the places that has the most sort of diverse participation that we're aware of, right? Like, they have very active outreach. And as you said, they have materials in lots of languages, and they make a real point to do a lot of programming that is inclusive. So yeah, so even with that knowledge, there's still people in the community who don't know about it. Shelby?
Yeah, Ian, it's, I love your fresh perspective you're bringing to the committee. So thank you for all the questions and keep them coming. What you just said is amazing to me, and it's like for all of us that live here, there's the library and we access the library and we know it's a free public library and anyone can go in, and it's like so obvious. It's sort of like that's West Main Street, right? But for folks that are here that come from different places who maybe have different customs and different rules where they came from, like, I don't know if you're from Peru, are there public libraries? I have no idea, right? Or maybe there's a fee, or you can only go into a certain one. I have no idea, but it's the basic aspect of your question illustrates to me what the opportunity is for doing the survey. I mean, it's just,
Yes.
So thank you for asking it. I'm kind of stunned. So thank you.
The difficulty will be capturing the people whose opinions and knowledge we need to address. And part of the very nature of diversity and inclusion is that you are talking typically about smaller subsets of the community, and getting a survey that captures a group of people that might represent 5% of the population of Westborough is the challenge, I think, in setting such a thing up.
You got it. That's exactly right. And that is why we know very well that this is not something for us to do as lay people. This is something to hire people who have experience in outreaching and engaging diverse communities, and doing so in ways that we get real, substantive data. So as we offered as like ideas or suggestions throughout the proposal, that may include not only an electronic survey that gets emailed out in a few languages, but access to a handwritten survey, opportunities for sharing feedback verbally through focus groups or some other kind of data collection, and maybe in ways that we aren't even thinking of, in order to really engage those who have been least engaged, which is what we would aim to do for sure. All right, so looking at the proposal itself, we got it down to 5 pages exactly. What do you think? Any overarching comments, feedback, thoughts about the narrative? Shelby?
Well, Ian's comment made me wonder if and I was just trying to pull it up on the screen here as I'm talking. Under the community survey design, I realize we're not designing the RFP here. That's not the purpose of the document. But do we need to elaborate a little bit more? I mean, as Ian was saying that, I'm almost thinking, that not that this has to be a door-to-door effort, but I think we're going to have to, whoever we hire is going to have to be very creative. I'm sure they'll have their ideas, but we may want to include that in the message that we present to the select board, or ultimately this initial document that accompanies, an RFP or an RFQ. I think RFQ is the right word. Meaning, so we talk about that there's going to be a community survey, and we talk about, paper and electronic. I'm just wondering if we just need a statement that the committee recognizes that, the kind of data that we need is kind of buried within the community. And so, drawing that out has to be a very thoughtful process that is not necessarily done by traditional, I'm sending you a survey link.
Yeah, Kim?
That was exactly my thought, is that I feel like we can identify the information we're hoping to obtain and rely on the consultants, be less prescriptive about how it's obtained, and rely on the consultant to identify the ways to do that. To Ian's point, this may require more focus groups with specific, with specific groups in the community. And I'd feel a little bit better if we provided the opportunity for the consultant to propose the means and the methods.
What I can do is I can just add a statement that is explicit about, we do look for the consultant to make the proposals about the means of gathering, with the caveat of that we do want to prioritize the voices of those who have, have not engaged in these processes before. I'll figure out a way.
Although that's another concern I have, because the reasons people don't engage, there are a variety of them, and it's hard to get information. I think we want to be careful, because we also want to make sure that we talk to people who do use town services.
Yeah.
And to me, it's equally important to have as much of, those are the people with the actual experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that's a good point.
It's very challenging, because I've done this before with other surveys for other topics, trying to understand why don't people use service X. And it's very challenging to come up with questions that aren't either leading or that provide valuable and meaningful information. I think there's some good things in there, if people just aren't hearing about things. There's some good questions about how do you get information, and maybe, we'll get some recommendations. There's more opportunity. I just want to be careful that we get, I think both of those groups are very important, and we're going to get a lot of really good information from people who are using town services, and also town staff. That was my final comment for right now. I just want to make sure that town staff aren't just completing the same survey. I think there's probably some specific directed conversation with town staff.
So maybe rather than saying, prioritizing a particular group or another, or those who have or have not been engaged, to just say that we'll rely on the consultant to recommend the best ways to gather information from any and all community members, including those who may not have historically been engaged. So we could mention that, but not identify it as a priority area. I think that we have already, again, please correct me if you think that this needs strengthening, but been clear that we want to include specifically employees, and specifically we want to hear about people's lived experience. And so I do think we have included that, but I hear you about being explicit that we may not know the best ways to reach everybody we're trying to reach, but we really are trying to reach everybody.
Can I make a suggestion that would sort of change the flavor of the discussion a little bit? I'm one of these people that gets 2 questions into a survey and says, I just can't be bothered. What's in it for me? And so rather than have this as a information harvesting process, let's have it a 2-way conversation. So we use this to actually tell people about the services that are, and then invite them to contribute what might be missing. And in that way, we're actually giving people, firstly, information we want them to have, but secondly, we're giving them something that will keep them working through the survey and giving us the information in return.
I think that I don't think that changes. I actually don't think that changes the conversation that much. I think it just builds upon what we've been talking about, which is we really want to look at people who have experience doing this work, to advise us and to design a survey process. We're calling it a community survey because that's the word that we have at our disposal to use. Whether that is the most descriptive term to describe how we gather information and input in order to inform what the town does. I think we need the experts to tell us what is the best way to do that. So, when we were, and I'll get to you in just a second, Donna, when we were part of leading up to this process, Ian, just to go back to your earlier question, we talked to other cities and towns who've done similar information gathering in various formats. And some have done a written survey, some have done listening sessions, some have done focus groups, and they have been facilitated and hosted by different entities depending on the town and what they're looking for. So I think that we want this to be unique to our town. So for example, just in the city of Lynn, big city, different than Westborough, but they did a similar process, but they did mayoral listening sessions. And it was really just like the mayor wanted to hear and have conversations with community people. In other towns, they did focus groups, which were kind of planned questions that were facilitated by an outside consultant. And in the town where I lived, we had conversations between elected officials and community members with some like sort of key questions to promote the conversation via Zoom. So, I think there's lots of ways to do it. And I don't want to presume that we know the best way, but we really want to put it on the consultants to advise us. Now, we could have very simply just said, we want to hire consultants to advise us how to gather information from people in Westborough to improve DEI in this town. But we have instead a 5-page letter because we do have lots of ideas and impressions about what questions we want answered in. And that we really want to show the select board and we want to show the town manager that, and ultimately this would likely go in front of town meeting. We want to show the people, the voters in Westborough, that we've given this a whole lot of thought and consideration. And we want to be inclusive. And that's why we've been so elaborate in our proposal, although we really want to put it on the experts to advise us. Donna?
I think you just covered it. I think the calling it the survey, we kind of all have our own impressions of what and experience of a survey. And I think the way that I've been thinking about this is a sort of a community assessment, which is strengths and needs sort of evaluation. And a survey may be, this sort of survey that with the questions may be one tool, but it's only one tool. And I would hope that the responses to the RFP, that's what we want to see from the consultants. What are their most innovative ways to capture this information? Working with, there are already community-based groups in town that those consultants should absolutely access and try to, because those are the people, that's where people go and hang out and trust, right? So I think, what you just said, Kara, is really important, that like, let's once we have those responses back, we're going to hope that we select the most innovative people to do this work. And they know how to do it. So let's let the experts do that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to put that word innovative in there. I don't think I have that word in there, but it's important. It's a good one. And Ian, just for a little bit more like logistical context, we've talked about the process of this would be, we give this letter, we send this letter to the select board ahead of whatever date we present to them, and they read it and they kind of formulate their questions. And then at the meeting, we will present them a much more short and concise version in kind of a PowerPoint where we summarize some of this stuff. And that's what I'm going to look to you today to kind of say, what are the pieces we really want to highlight in that presentation? What do we want to say out loud to the select board that we really want them to hone in on? And then if the select board says, good idea, let's move forward with this, then it will go to the town manager. So Christy Williams and Kim Foster and their staff will look at this and develop an RFP based in great part upon all the conversations we've had in this committee, and in consultation with the chairperson of this committee, in consultation with this committee, but the RFP will be written by the town manager's office. And then what we hope the timeline will be is that RFP will then go out in enough time so that we get proposals back and can make a provisional selection of a potential prospective consultant. And then we'd go to town meeting saying, here's what we want to hire we want to hire a consultant for this amount of money to do this job. And we have a proposal, and we wouldn't, as Kim explained last time, we wouldn't sign any contracts with any consultants until it gets approved by town meeting. And we have the finances to move forward. But that is kind of logistically how it would all work. Any other comments about the narrative? I just want to thank those of you who really helped kind of get into the nitty gritty of this narrative and help flesh it out. I really appreciated all the feedback that you gave, and I feel really good about it. Like, I feel like it's pretty clear and it represents all of the discussions we've had. All right, so thank you for that. Okay, so I asked Celia Dorr, who is the select board confidential admin assistant, to let me know when the select board has an opening on the agenda that we could present this after town meeting, spring town meeting. And the date that she initially has given me is April 12th. So if it works, works for all of you, I would love to present it to the select board on April 12th. That is the second Tuesday in April. I don't know at what time, but I'd love to have any or all of you come with me to present it at that time. So how does that date sound for us as far as getting everything together for that by that time? Shelby?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that it's really important that as a committee, to the extent possible, that we have as many folks at the meeting as possible. I don't know by April. I think the governor's orders will still be in effect. They won't be, Kim?
No. They've been
sorry.
extended they've actually been extended through July 15th.
Okay, so participation will probably be available, virtually in sort of a hybrid format, but to the extent that folks can be there, I do think it's important for the board to see that and to see the representation of this committee at the meeting. Obviously, if people can't, but you can zoom in, that's excellent as well. So I just want to say that. And then the other suggestion I might have, Kara, I know you're looking for volunteers for to really help put the presentation together. I think it would be a powerful message for not only you to present that, but for one of the resident members to co-present with you.
Thank you. I agree. Kim?
So the intent would be, we still have then the March meeting, right? We're in February. Okay. Yeah. We would still have the March meeting to review, get everything lined up for that April 12th presentation. Okay.
Yeah, I think my vision is that between now and next month's meeting, we get a draft of a PowerPoint. We review the PowerPoint at the March meeting, and then we finalize it before the April presentation.
And if for any reason it were needed, the timing if we needed to slot in an extra meeting, we would have the opportunity. So my opinion is the timeline works.
I think the document is so well written. I mean, as I was looking through it, thinking, how do you build slides? I think it's pretty straightforward, to be honest with you. I mean,
I know that Shazia has already taken some effort to outline it. And Shazia, I know I said that I was going to look at that before this meeting, and I just realized I didn't. And part of that is because it doesn't appear that your email got to me, Shazia. So thank you for trying, but I don't see anything. But Shazia had already started to outline sort of what she thought could be in a PowerPoint. And I don't know, Shazia, I didn't ask you, are you thinking you would like to design a PowerPoint, or you're just good with the content and let somebody else design the PowerPoint?
I can help with anything other than, like I told you, presenting because of the month.
Yeah, Shazia's got a lot on her plate in the coming months, so she's going to be behind the scenes more than in front. Is there anybody here who really likes making PowerPoint or similar? It doesn't have to be PowerPoint. It could be, their Prezi or whatever forum.
Nobody likes doing PowerPoint, but I can, and I'm pretty reasonable at the editing of language. I speak a version of English, so that helps.
Okay. Are you volunteering to then?
I can contribute at
Okay.
a number of different levels. I can take the content and put it into a PowerPoint presentation, or I can take the PowerPoint presentation and edit it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
send you the one I have,
Okay.
and then
Great.
yeah, we can work.
Okay. Shazi and Ian, you got it. I will
Okay.
also reach out to Kola and Alma and Sarah to see if they would like to contribute to that process as well. If for no other reason than just to provide additional editing eyes before we bring it
Almost
back.
here.
Oh, hi, Alma.
I'm here. I'm listening.
Hi, it's
Yeah.
nice
I'm
to see you. I'm
listening
sorry, I didn't see your.
attentively.
Yeah,
That's
she joined
great.
around 4 o'clock. She's been here.
All right, thanks. Sorry, I didn't see your face or hear your voice, so I was tuned into the looking at the faces. But I'm really glad you're here.
I didn't even pay attention to that.
Okay, well, I wasn't meaning
All right.
to.
Yeah, my dark office. So, okay.
Okay. All right. So just want to make sure that, again, Shazi has already started on a draft of this, but what are the super, make sure we say this explicitly out loud directly to the select board? What are the high points that you want to make sure are included on that? And you can either just verbally say it, or you can look through the proposal and tell me page 3, paragraph 4, or whatever.
Eric, could you share the screen to pull up the proposal? Just so.
Yes,
That'd be
yes. I will do that. Yes, Kim.
And as you're pulling that up, I think Ian's earlier question is a good starting point. Maybe just the first slide is kind of how did we get to where we are today? And just a very brief history of the committee, and I think that would be a great intro.
Yeah.
Yeah, that problem statement is really important.
Oops, let me clear this up for you. All right. Here we go. So let me know what you would like me, just call out what you would like to look at.
Well, I think the purpose. Right.
Lock everything up. Yeah, I have another half hour. So.
So I think there's lots of content right there in the proposal summary section. It outlines the purpose of this, the scope of those that we hope to, the areas we want to address, talks about the assessment Donna mentioned, and the different aspects of DEI that we want to be included in this. So I think there's lots of meat there in terms of what what would be the purpose of this act.
And please know, for those of you who are creating the PowerPoint, I'm pretty adept at presenting PowerPoints, and I'm happy to just have bullet points on the slides and, fill in the content. So let's make it light on words and, heavy on highlights. All right, I will shift down to the next page. We should have a line that says cost.
Donna had her hand up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Donna. I'm sorry, I can't see it.
No,
right.
That's okay. Two things that really stand out to me in terms are the whys of why we feel this is necessary now. What's the catalyst for it? And I think I'm not exactly sure what page or paragraph it's on, but we talk about that disparities in services have really been highlighted as a result of the COVID pandemic that we've just all sort of, and that not only here, obviously in Westborough, but across the country, those disparities have really been highlighted. And I think that's a really critical point because it's a catalyst for this. I think the other thing is just the changing demographics of Westborough, which we all sort of, I think that putting those numbers down really demonstrates what I think we already see and know and feel and experience, but I think the numbers are pretty compelling.
Thank you. Please go ahead and just speak out if you have thoughts. So we should have, we should say in there what the something about the cost, summarizing our statement about cost. I don't think we should do it at the very beginning. I think we should highlight the whys, really make a compelling case and then say, we haven't forgotten about talking about the cost, but here's our thoughts about that.
I think it, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that I think you want to include there that it would be facilitated through the town manager's office with there's that input from the DI committee, whatever that language is there. I think it's just above what we're looking at right now.
Okay.
Do you think it might be useful, Kara, instead of maybe putting may exceed 50,000, maybe give a range? I could see how that might be off-putting to the taxpayer if you said may exceed 50,000, because it puts like a limitless number in their minds to it. I don't know if you have numbers from other communities that you had mentioned.
Well, I think that you were not present when we had this conversation at a recent meeting. Either you had stepped out or weren't there that day, but we named the $50,000 mark because that is the mark that is required to put forth an RFP. And we, based on what other communities have shared with us, we do expect that it will be 50,000, but we really have very little sense of how much more it will be. So we do recognize how daunting this could be to the taxpayer. But what I'm thinking about right now is we're at this moment persuading the select board to be able to put out the RFP. Before it goes to town meeting, we will have a number to give to the taxpayer. That's the intention, is that we would not go to town meeting with a nebulous range. We would go with a more concrete number.
Well, Kara, then maybe we should say approximately $50,000. So that gives us a little wiggle room. And like Mike said, it doesn't make people nervous thinking we're going to ask for 50 and it's going to be 70.
I don't think we can, because it might be 70.
I think having the number not float, it'd be important. So $50,000 is only a couple of dollars per resident. And if you consider the total cost of the services that we provide, then having this information and allow that provision of services to be more effective is hugely valuable. So, 50,000 sounds like a lot of money, but in reality, it's not.
Yeah, and we're talking about a $50,000 or $70,000 or even $90,000 one time, right? And not to say that the recommendations out of this project won't lead to additional costs. It very well may, but right now we're not asking for $50,000 annually. We're asking for one-time expenditure, and to your point, Ian, in the grand scheme, that's only a couple of dollars.
I think also as to the cost, I think, and again, this is part of how it's presented. We're not sort of saying we don't know. We're soliciting, we're providing the guide rails in which for a proposal to be submitted, and we're saying anticipated costs. And so, ultimately anything that's approved is going to have to go before the taxpayer anyway at town meeting. And so I'm comfortable the way it's written. I get what Mike's saying about the may exceed, but I think we're okay to go with that as long as we have the narrative part of that in the presentation.
I can be explicit in the narrative as well in the presentation that that once we get the RFP and we get the proposals, that then it would go before taxpayers. The select board knows that process, but it doesn't hurt to say it explicitly, Kim.
Because I'm sorry, just to follow on that, not all proposals are created equal. The the $30,000 proposal may not be the right one for the town in terms of its scope and approach and everything else. It may be the, $65,000 one. So that's really where they have to understand, the qualitative aspects of what we get and have cost be a component of that evaluation.
Yep, you got it. Exactly. Kim?
If we think the range is 50 to 70, I'm comfortable putting a range because I think that's for a number of other points that have been raised. When you do an RFP, we don't have to base the award on the lowest bidder. We may choose to go with something that's more robust and cost more, but at the same time, if cost becomes a real constraint, we can negotiate some of the things out. So if we have a sense and believe that there is a range and that range is 50 to 70, I don't see the harm in putting a range in here at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, that's as good a sense as I can have at this point based on the conversations I've had with other towns, but I really don't know. How do other people other than Kim and Alma feel about putting a $50,000 to $70,000 range?
I have no idea where the $50,000 comes from anyway, and what the reality is. My big nervousness is to make this effective, right? Whatever it costs, if it's not effective, then it's wasted money. And my experience with diversity in this town is fairly simple. As a recent member of the Armstrong School Parent Group, I was really surprised to see how that group of people reflected in no way the diversity of the school population. I sat down with 6 middle-class white women, and I know that half the kids come from Indian background, approximately. Where are all of those people? How do we capture their needs and opinions in a survey like this? How do we find them? How do we get them to respond? And will these consultants even go close to that?
So given the circular nature of this conversation, I'm going to go back to what is in the narrative and say may exceed 50,000 with the possibility that will make people uncomfortable and lead to this conversation with the select board. How do you feel about that?
I'm happy with that, but are we committed? All we're asking for a commitment is to extend an RFP.
You got it. That's it. That's why I don't.
And when we're not then committed to actually take any of the Ps.
You got it. That's right. That's why I kind of just want to go back to it. Alma?
And when you speak to them, if one of the selectmen asks, like, how much do you think it'll exceed $50,000? You can say to them, well, the other communities that have done this that I've talked to have said that whoever has spent up to 70,000. So until we get the RFP out, we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it also has to be the right size for this town, right? Yeah. So to everyone's point, it has to be the consultants that have the best handle on how we going to get to those members of the community who do currently access services, as well as those who don't currently access services. So I think right size for this town.
Yeah.
The other thing, just to go back to the question about the points for the presentation, if we're talking about cost, we have to talk about the benefits. Why are we doing? What is the benefit of doing this, right? And so I think part of the section where you have the other efforts that are happening in town currently around gathering information and sort of working to consolidate or somehow work on those efforts together, I think is a huge benefit to making sure that each of those efforts gets the most value. And then that there's actionable, I think that is the other thing that needs to be a benefit, is that it's actionable items that come out of this, not just sort of, the nice sort of language, but that they're truly workable and actionable.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, so right now what we have identified is absolutely needs to be in the proposal are the how did we get here? the background, why this is necessary now, which will include talking about how the pandemic has really highlighted the disparities nationwide about access and engagement, as far as particularly around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're going to highlight the demographic changes in Westborough. We're going to emphasize that this concretely would be led by the town manager's office. We're going to talk about the cost and benefits, including what Donna just explained, and sort of leave room for more Q&A around the dollar amount and why we have it somewhat vaguely listed right now. So that is what we have so far in the priorities for the presentation. Anything else? And Shazia, I welcome your input because you have been working on this already.
Yeah, I was just going to say the final point, I guess, would be our expected deliverables.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I think that'll make a good presentation. And of course, they have this all as a point of reference. Okay.
Kara, can I just, sorry, can I
Yeah,
just
Shelby,
ask,
go ahead.
we spend a lot of time in the document talking about the questions. And some of the questions, survey questions.
Mhm.
Well, I certainly don't think the PowerPoint should list all of those. You might want to reference that, in the packet the board received, there's a list of questions. These are anticipated as guidance as we're soliciting proposals. But I don't, and I think that there are ways in which you can narrate or have a handful of bullet points, and use them as examples. That would be one thing I would suggest adding. And then also the time frame around this, around the deliverables. So
Good idea.
we're asking the board to take action when, and and then in again, visuals are always really helpful. So a timeline. So we're coming now. Is this an October town meeting request, or is it spring town meeting? 2023. I assume it's for annual town meeting. Fall town meeting in October. That's kind of our anticipation, but actually, given the proposal cycle, maybe we're really looking at it as annual town meeting. So we should talk about that as a committee. What is our expectation?
Just going to leave this part up here. To that point, Shelby, up until this time, we have talked about having it be, well, originally we hoped to have it at March town meeting, but that didn't happen. So I would say it's not unrealistic to aim for October town meeting, with the understanding that if the RFP process gets delayed for some reason, or we aren't getting the proposals that we're seeking, that it may have to be postponed beyond that. But Kim, do you want to speak to the timeline at all?
No, I agree with what you just said. It seems reasonable where we're sitting today, but things can and do come up. So if we're ready for October, and it honestly, it may also depend on the cost. I mean, if it comes in for whatever reason, significantly more expensive, and depending on how things look, I think it's reasonable to aim to have something for October though.
When you, does anybody want me to continue to share my screen, or shall I close it?
No.
Okay. Thinking of going back to the cost issue again, and what if the cost ends up being something that we're not prepared for? I think this is not something I'm going to put in the proposal, nor am I necessarily going to plan it. I don't think it should be in the presentation, but I think we should be prepared to address the question of, are there other ways to pay for this than asking the taxpayers? And I don't personally have a concrete answer to that at this time, but I am aware of communities who have applied for and obtained grants to cover different components of DEI work in municipalities. So I don't think it's impossible that there could be grant money out there. So that will be something to be said, and just kind of anticipating for this committee that there may need to be further conversation. I don't know who would kind of take the lead on exploring or researching grant opportunities. I don't know if that would be this committee. I don't know if that would be the town manager's office or some other entity. But I think we should be prepared for that question to arise with the select board.
So Kara,
Mhm.
how deep do you imagine this survey going? Like, we've got 19,000 people approximately in this town. What proportion of them will be asked for their opinions? And the reason I ask that is that I do a lot of what we call voice of customer surveys as part of my professional work. And what I've found is that if you ask 10 or 20 of your customers, you get a very good idea of what the outcome is going to be when you ask the next 120. And I wonder if either this committee were to identify 2 or 3 members of the different subsets of Westborough community and just ask them the questions, and then either have an actionable set of data from that, or a set of data that can be used to guide the next step of collecting more information.
I mean, these are conversations we've considered in this committee as we've gotten up to this point. Are there existing stakeholders that we can utilize? Is the data that has been collected through other means something that we can use to create actionable steps? And at the end of the day, our answer is, well, we know we haven't asked everybody and we're not sure how to ask everybody. So at the risk of sounding a bit like a broken record, we'll look to the consultants to advise us of sort of what are the numbers we're looking for. I imagine, like, if you ask, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but if you ask any of the municipalities who've done any of this type of information gathering, they've had different proportions of respondents in different communities. And I don't know what to expect. I don't know how our community would compare to that. I don't know what's realistic. My hope is that we get consultants who have conducted these surveys numerous times, and they would be able to say it would be really great to get, a 15% response rate or something like that. I have no idea. Totally.
Yeah, and I think the other big piece that we talked a lot about as a committee was that even just the questions to ask, like some of them are pretty obvious, but many of them I don't think are necessarily obvious to this committee, given our professional and personal experiences. And so that was also, I appreciate what you're saying, but I think that was, for me, that was also why I wanted to kind of go down this path of let's put some money behind it and a consultant who are trained in this space. But I think you raised a really good point. Like, how are we going to know if this is successful and far reaching enough? And we're going to, that's part of what I think we're going to have to further hone in on. And that might be a question that, the board asks. How are we going to know, that this is really a representative survey?
Mm-hmm.
So if none of the people in that 35% of people that don't speak English at home respond to the survey, then you'll know that it's failed.
Well, I think, and I think this whole process of conducting a community survey and how the process goes is going to be informative about what Westborough needs to continue to do. So I think the data that comes from responses directly, as well as what the process is like, will be informative. And I mean, we are going to rely on consultants to do the job we hire them to do. And I'm not going to say if they fail, that shows us that, Westborough has failed. But, I think that the whole process will be informative, even if we don't get exactly the responses or participation that we're looking for. because we don't really know what we're looking for. Donna?
I agree, and I think it's iterative. I think it is it needs to be iterative, right? So this is sort of a first goal of finding out where are there gaps, and then hopefully the actionable items are addressing those gaps, and then you know that you need to do a follow-up assessment to find out if those gaps have been truly filled, right? So it has, this to me is not, this is the first, it's maybe the 6th, there's 10th step. I don't mean to take away from what other committees in town are doing, but for this committee, I think the first step is to get the request in front of the board to say, let's go forward with this. And then I think these are really, really valuable points to have in a conversation with, potential consultants, because these are the questions that we want to get to make sure that they're going to be creative in the ways that they're getting out to the full community.
Mm-hmm. Shelby?
Yeah, I think that so a couple things. Sorry. I think we need to relate this back. I'm just toggling back between what Donna said in the PowerPoint. We should relate this back to relevance to the master plan and strategic plan and work that we've done, and how this ties into those other kind of studies. I think it ties into the work that the police department is doing with the peace officer training. I think that, no, post, right, Mike? So there's a tie-in there. There's a tie-in to some of, environmental justice and then, Donna, to your point, and Ian, I think that I would anticipate this work will inform other groups. Like I think about the newly formed formed Disability Commission.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like what's going to come out of this that we wouldn't anticipate that might inform their work,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or the Active Transportation Safety Committee or other groups that we were like, wow, we wouldn't have even anticipated that, we have a committee, but they're not addressing this need. So,
Yeah. So to wrap up this conversation, I will email to Ian and Shazia this list of priorities to include in the presentation, just so we're all on the same page. And then Shazia and Ian, if you don't mind, I'll leave it to you to kind of flesh things out. And then when you feel like you have what you want to present to the whole committee, you send it to me and I'll send it to the committee and we will go over it at the next meeting.
So we're looking at a 5 to 10 minute, I assume, presentation to the select board.
Yeah, how long do you think it should be, folks? I left that up in the air when I said to Sela, reserve us a spot. I was like, I don't know if we'll need 15 minutes or what.
10 minutes is perfect.
Okay. All right, great. 10
but
minutes.
For the presentation, Mike, you're thinking?
Yeah, and then there'll be follow-ups.
Yeah, I mean, if you have
So
a slide, it's probably.
I think 5 minutes for the presentation, 15 minutes for the full conversation, including the presentation and the Q&A.
Yeah, Seela, I just got the agenda for next Tuesday night and everything's scheduled between 5 minutes and 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
think
5, 10, 15,
I will ask
20
Sela
minutes.
for 15 minutes on the agenda.
Hmm.
And if we can plan kind of a 5 to 7 minute presentation, and that leaves us a little bit more time than that for Q&A. All right, so last point on the agenda, thank you for that awesome conversation. We got a lot done, is planning for our quarterly evening meeting. When we last met, we had, as a committee, decided on the evening of March 22nd to have our evening meeting, but I have learned that Memorial Hall is not available that night. So our options are the following. We can either meet in Great Hall that night, or we can meet in Memorial Hall on March 29th. We wouldn't be able to meet in Memorial Hall on the 22nd because the select board meeting at that time, which means Westborough TV will be broadcasting them at that time. So I am gonna suggest we have our March meeting on March 29th in the evening, 6 o'clock to 7:30 in Memorial Hall. Kim,
Right, I am unavailable.
okay. Is anyone else knowingly unavailable on the 29th?
Yeah, I'll be away at training
Okay.
for that.
What do the rest of you think? Should we meet on that night anyway, or should we meet without Westboro TV in Great Hall on the 22nd? Well, but Shelby won't be able to be there on the 22nd, and Kim won't be able to be there on the 22nd. So Kim's out both of those dates.
And Kara, did you say the 15th was not available?
Yes, there was something about the 15th that wasn't going to work.
Okay.
I can't recall right now what the story was on the 15th, but
So not that, so, I'm sorry, you didn't list the 28th, right, of March?
yes, 28th of March is the date I'm suggesting. Did I say the 29th? Whatever.
You said
The
29.
29th. At the
Yeah.
29th on a Tuesday night. We agreed to keep it on a Tuesday night since that is operating hours.
And it's 2 weeks before the meeting that we're presenting in.
Okay, because
That's-
I'm on another committee and the Cable TV Advisory Committee is probably going to have a public hearing on the 28th, so.
Okay, so I'm gonna suggest the 29th, 6 to
Okay.
7:30. Kim and Mike, you'll get the draft of the PowerPoint ahead of time. So if you have any input you'd like to share, we'll bring that on your behalf. All right, so those two calendar points.
Kara, you might just want to confirm. Sorry, I'm just counting to make sure.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, to make sure we have a quorum.
Yeah,
All right,
so
Um,
you're missing Sarah and,
Oh,
so you'd
So
be
we'll
good
have-
even
we'll
if
have
Sarah,
7 people. And then if Sarah and Cola could come, that would be 9, but we will at least have
That's okay.
7 and we need 6. So, okay, thank you. All right, so Tuesday, March 29th, 6 to 7:30 in Memorial Hall. My guess will be a hybrid meeting. We'll advertise that to the public. I'll try to advertise that in advance. And then the April 12th, we will present to the select board. I don't know at what time. Their meetings start at 6, right, Shelby and Kim? 6 o'clock usually? Okay. So at some 15-minute interval between 6 and 9 on April 12th. Any other comments or questions before we close? All right, well, perfect timing because my kids just got home.
thank you.
Great,
All right,
thanks, everyone.
thank you.
Do need a
Oh,
motion
we
to
need a
adjourn?
motion to
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
Kim moves, Shelby seconds, Shelby.
No, second.
Okay,
Oh,
okay,
Marshall,
so,
yes,
yeah, Sarah. Yes to adjourn, no to adjourn. Yes,
Will,
okay. Donna,
Lang, yes.
Alma,
Yes.
Mike,
Daniels, yes.
Kim,
Foster, yes.
Ian,
Yes.
Shazia,
yes.
Presley, yes. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.